today with an amazing entrepreneur and educator, Lindsay Sara. She is a trauma-informed fertility awareness educator and licensed social worker, guiding wild souls to unearth the wisdom and power of the menstrual cycle through cyclical living, natural birth control, conscious conception, womb healing after trauma. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us today. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here as well and just be able to share in this event.
I think the amazing thing is that we have just gathered such a kaleidoscope of experts here to support those that are going through their fertility journey and maybe struggling with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and seeing your unique perspective and bringing that to the summit was truly a piece that I felt strongly about, because there's so much kind of new territory here that some of our listeners may not have come across before. So that being said, I would love to hear more about your mission in supporting women through their menstrual journey and through and how you could support them through their their fertility journey as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I am a fertility awareness method educator, and we'll talk more about that here. But basically, I help people understand how to listen to the language of your menstrual cycle and the language of your body. Your body's communicating so much with you constantly, all day, every day. And so I really support people in like tapping into that wisdom. And as far as conception goes, tapping into that wisdom in order to support you on your conception journey so that you know the most optimal time in your cycle to conceive. And not only that, so that you also are taking the time to like consciously prepare your body for conception.
This is really an interesting insight, and something that I really have embodied is that there is multiple layers to us. We are multifaceted beings. We are not just a body. We are not just a mind. We also have emotions, and we also have parts of us that we've experienced, right? Our experiences shape us. And then we have a spiritual connection as well. And so all of these things work together and create the kind of environment that we, live our life through. And, what you're talking about certainly touches in all of these kind of components. Obviously,
Yeah.
Our menstrual cycles are very physical. They're very visceral. We have very physical things that go along with it, but it's so much more than that, right?
It is. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So my lens with this work is really looking at like the emotions and energetic aspects of the menstrual cycle. Because like you said, yes, it is a physical thing that is happening in our body with very obvious. I mean, you can't like not notice that you're bleeding, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
or not bleeding for that matter.
or
I mean,
not bleeding.
There's both
Exactly. Exactly. But there also is this emotional component to like what kinds of emotions your womb is storing. Like I kind of view the womb as this storage area of emotions and stories that you've carried throughout your lifetime and throughout your lineage. So like what is actually, being stored within your body. And so that's what I help people with the educational piece to really understand like how their bodies work. But I also support people in the emotion and emotional and like energetic side of things as well. So you're healing your body in all the layers.
Yes. And it's I think it's really important, in this kind of day and age where we focus so much on physicality and, eating right and taking the supplements and doing all the lifestyle things, which are very important, especially when you're supporting a, kind of complex condition like PCOS that has all these facets. But at the same time, when you just focus on the physicality and don't kind of dig a little bit deeper into the emotional aspects, and the kind of, healing work that happens when you start um, opening up yourself to your heart and to your womb, you find that there's a lot more there that could
Yeah.
be blocking your ability to either make the changes to support your body or even just, energetically being able to conceive in general. I mean, there's something there, and it's not just all woo woo. While woo woo is great, I love woo woo, but there is something to this, and how much we can really keep ourselves from moving forward in our growth when we don't start looking at these kind of things. I definitely want to talk about womb healing, but first let's talk about this fertility awareness method. What is FAM? And I know
Yeah.
that you are an educator, so what is it, and how can it support those that are going through the fertility process in their journey?
Yeah. So the fertility awareness method, I kind of define it as the practice of tracking your menstrual cycle to, there are three components, but I'll focus more on the conception component. So one is timing conception optimally.
Hmm.
The second is avoiding pregnancy naturally. And then
Hmm.
the third is actually understanding your body and your health and hormones, which really also comes into play with conception. Like they're very interconnected. And so we're not just like period tracking. We're not just
Right.
saying like, okay, you have your period this day and the next month it comes this day. We're actually tracking specific signals that your body is giving you day to day that give you information about your health
Yeah.
and your fertility.
Mhm.
So the things that we're tracking are first cervical mucus. That is definitely the most important, what we call biomarker. Biomarkers are life signs, and they
Mhm.
basically just give you information about your health.
Yeah.
So, cervical mucus is one of those. And, if you're not familiar with the term cervical mucus, maybe
Mhm.
you're familiar with the term discharge.
Mhm.
Discharge can include cervical mucus as well as other things, but
Mhm.
we're looking specifically at cervical mucus, which is from your cervix. And
Mhm.
it could look many different ways. Like if you ever wiped and you saw something like creamy or cloudy, or maybe you've seen something clear and that maybe stretches a little bit or a lot, like there's
Mhm.
lots of different ways that cervical mucus can look. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't see any cervical mucus.
Mhm.
And all of those things are giving you cues. And I don't want to make it seem like it's bad if you're not seeing cervical mucus, because that's like good in its own way if it's coming at the right time in your cycle, right?
Mhm.
So what we're doing is gathering information every day about like what's happening with your cervical mucus and what is that telling you about if you're fertile or not,
Mhm.
because we're not fertile every single day of our cycle. So sometimes, if you're trying to conceive and you're having trouble, like my first question always is like, well, are you tracking your cervical mucus? Like, do you know when you're
Mhm.
fertile? Do you know when you're not? Are you trying at the right times in your cycle, which can be a little harder to pinpoint with PCOS. And we could dive a little deeper into that. But with fertility awareness, we're using cervical mucus. I just went really deep into that, but we're also looking at basal body temperature,
Yeah.
which can be really supportive as well, because that can actually tell you, are you before ovulation or after ovulation. um, Temperatures are usually lower before ovulation and they rise higher after. And I realized I kind of missed this part. What is basal body temperature? That
Okay.
is when your temperature the first thing in the morning when you wake up. And it's not just using like any old thermometer. You're using like a very specific, more accurate
Mhm.
basal body thermometer to get those temperatures. And so yeah, temperature is going to tell you, are you before or after ovulation. Cervical mucus is going to tell you more day-to-day information of, are you potentially approaching ovulation? Are you possibly after ovulation? And we use those two to give us information about pinpointing ovulation. That's really
Mhm.
like the main part of fertility awareness, is pinpointing ovulation. And with that information, either using it to conceive or using it to avoid pregnancy.
Mhm.
Um, and another marker that I like to use with fertility awareness is LH testing as well, which is a hormone where it's a urine test, and you can just get little test strips at your local CVS or whatever. But I can also give you links. My favorite brand is Prove.
Mhm.
But anyways, you can use those urine test strips to help you understand when LH launches, and LH is a
Mhm.
hormone that triggers ovulation.
Mhm.
So it's not always a guarantee when you get a positive LH test that you're going to
Mhm.
ovulate after that, especially with PCOS, but
Right.
it can give you information about, like, am I potentially going to be ovulating within 24 to 36 hours? And that would be a very optimal time to try to conceive. And so I use those three aspects of your cycle, like LH testing, cervical mucus, and basal body temperature, to help give you more information about your body and your health. Because cervical mucus is also going to be very reflective of where your hormone levels are at.
Mhm.
And if they are at if your hormones are at optimal levels to support a pregnancy.
Yes.
Like, I think the biggest thing about fertility awareness that I feel like everyone should know on the conception journey is um, being able to understand the length of your luteal phase, which
I
is the
literally just wrote
period.
that down.
Yes.
It's
So
huge.
it's huge. So the period of time after ovulation, up to your next period,
Mhm.
that's your luteal phase. And with fertility awareness, it helps you pinpoint ovulation. And then once you know when you ovulated, you can then count the days of your luteal phase. This
Mhm.
is really important because if you're trying to conceive, I mean, with my training, I was learned, 9 days or more you want for a
Mhm.
luteal phase. However, just from looking at other sources and things, I would say more like 11.
Yeah, I was gonna say 11 to 12
Yes,
is where
11 to 12
ideal. Yeah.
is much more ideal.
Mhm.
Um, 11 to 12 days or more. Um, and actually, fertility awareness helps you know, like, at the earliest possible time whether you're pregnant or not too,
Mhm.
because if you have a luteal phase that is 18 days or more, then you are pregnant.
Yep.
So you'll know earlier than like anyone else in this world who's not using fertility awareness, like,
Yeah.
if you're pregnant. But the thing about the luteal phase is that it is the time of our cycle when our body produces progesterone.
Yeah.
And basically, we want to see a luteal phase that's at least 11 to 12 days, because that is reflective of sufficient progesterone levels. The
Right.
reason this is important is because we need progesterone in the first trimester to actually support the pregnancy.
Right.
And if you do not have enough progesterone to support the pregnancy in the first trimester, then you
It
will
leads
have
to
a risk
miscarriage.
of miscarriage. Exactly. And so I like always advise everyone, like, before you even try to conceive, learn to track your cycle, learn fertility awareness, learn
Mhm.
to understand if you're ovulating. First of all, if you're not going to conceive.
Right.
And when in your cycle are you ovulating, so that you actually know how long your luteal phase is before you even try to conceive.
Mhm.
Because then you're giving yourself the best chance to avoid a potential miscarriage if
Mhm.
you catch something and like, my luteal phase is not long enough. Well, then that's probably not the best time to try to conceive. I would
Right.
say take that time to actually work on healing your body and your cycle first, to get your luteal phase up to a sufficient number of days
Right.
before you even begin trying.
This is the information that you can bring to your provider and say, hey, I've been tracking this consistently. My luteal phase is 8 days. I know this is the concern with my progesterone. Maybe we should check, let's check my
Yeah.
progesterone in my luteal phase, see if I need support. That way, if I do conceive, I have the support that I need through, supplements or, other ways that we work to help support our progesterone. But this is
Right.
very common. And you know, I've discussed it in a couple other interviews is it's because we don't ovulate as much, our progesterone tends to be low. Cortisol,
Yeah,
higher cortisol also affects our
exactly.
ability to have progesterone. So I did want to point out about kind of the difference between FAM and tracking your cycles on a period app. Okay.
Hmm.
Because this is something that I think is really important, especially if you have PCOS, but for everybody. So, you know, traditionally these period apps are using, you know, the rhythm method. So they're basically just using a random algorithm that says, okay, well, based on your prior cycles, you're most likely going to be ovulating here. But it's not taking into consideration what your body is telling you. It's just timing it based on the mass of people that are in the information
Yeah.
that I had in there. And so if you're, you know, if you are experiencing cycles, maybe you only have a cycle every 60 days or something like that. You still are only fertile, you know, for about 6 days in that whole cycle. So if an app is telling you, hey, have sex on day 14 or whatever, well, you might not be ovulating until day 45. And so if you're
Mhm.
not paying attention, because that's what happens is we kind of stop paying attention to what's going on in
Yeah.
our body. It's very common and it's not anybody's fault. It's just we kind of grow up not paying attention to things like cervical mucus and
Right.
measuring our temperature. So it's like, okay. So if you're not in the habit of seeing that, like maybe you know, that changes when you start paying attention. You're like, oh, wait, I actually do have mucus. I do have something I can pay attention to. And then you start to establish a pattern. And then you start to become like this menstrual mapper. You get to create your own unique map that helps you understand your body better and can time sex more appropriately. That works for
Right.
you rather than um, having an app tell you when you should, or even going into sex burnout by having sex every other day for days on end. That no, I mean, nobody wants to do that. That is
I
very
know.
difficult and it can wreak havoc on your relationship. So using a tool like the fertility awareness method helps give you the information that you need to support your conception journey in addition to all the other modalities that you're using to support your health. It's another tool in your toolbox to help you find your best, you know, most fertile time and to help you understand what your body is saying with all parts of your cycle, not just your menstruation and not just when you're ovulating.
Totally. I love that you added that in there because I always just like to say, like, your app is not in your ovaries, so it doesn't really know.
No,
Like,
it's
the
not in
thing
your brain,
is,
it's not in your ovaries, it's not
no,
anywhere.
not in your body, so it doesn't know. And
Mhm.
when you're the app is looking at past cycles and saying like, oh, you ovulated at this time in a past cycle, or you bled at this time in a past cycle, so that's when ovulation then is going to happen in the future. But that's not the case because
No.
your body is just so dynamic and it's
Hmm.
responding to everything around you, stress
Hmm.
levels,
Yeah,
yes,
it's like stress,
sleep,
sickness, if you know,
illness,
illness,
yeah.
yeah, or anything
um
energetically.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
even like if you're traveling or eating differently and everything, it's responding to everything. And so, you know, that's all going to impact like if and when you're going to be ovulating in your cycle. So that's why fertility awareness helps you tune into the wisdom and information your body is giving you every day rather than using past cycle data like the rhythm method or calendar method would use to predict the future because that's just not going to be very accurate.
Yeah, and it's not you know, the unique thing, and when I started kind of diving into how to apply FAM to PCOS and really like understanding that piece that, you know, your body, it's because we have these levels of LH and FSH, that these ratios that are kind of flipped, and we have LH way higher than we should. So we're not quite, you know, our body's trying, our body's trying, our body's trying. And eventually it kind of goes over the edge and is able to ovulate. But understanding those pieces of, you know, by tracking your temperature so you can confirm that ovulation has happened. And then also, you know, understanding that there's a difference between, you know, those peak fertile days and what that mucus looks like, then kind of these false start that, you know, I
Yeah,
guess what I kind of call them is like false starts when your body's trying to
totally.
ovulate, but it doesn't quite get there. And that's different. It's
Exactly.
going to look different. And until you start paying attention to that, you're not going to notice those subtle differences because it is subtle. And it takes
It
time for you
is.
to learn the language of your body because you're going to be different than, you know, me and you know, everybody's going to be
Yes.
different. And so it does take time to establish patterns. But honestly, like once you start doing it, you kind of start seeing things start to reveal themselves quicker than you would think.
Yeah.
It really does. It's really amazing. So I love that you focus so much on educating on and educating women on how to approach this, you know, kind of this non-hormone based birth control, which has excellent efficacy with proper use. I mean, and
Yeah.
some would say better efficacy than others. Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and when doing
99.4%.
it's really it doesn't get much better than that beyond
No, it
abstinence.
doesn't.
So this is something to even consider after, you know, once you've had pregnancy and then, you know, moving into that is how it can support you in your
Yeah.
all your menstrual health. So
Oh, you know what? On
yeah,
that
please.
note too, so if you're wanting to learn fertility awareness and you're like, oh, I actually want to learn it to avoid pregnancy, um, I would say learn before you're pregnant because
Mm,
learning postpartum is one of the most challenging times to learn.
interesting.
Be- yes, because postpartum, it's like, you know, your body is it's trying to come back to
Mhm.
ovulation, it's trying to regulate itself, and your cervical mucus patterns are not going to be very clear. If you have experience charting your cycle, like
Mm.
when you are, you know, ovulating and you're not postpartum essentially, you get to learn more about your body then and what your cervical mucus looks like, and then apply that postpartum.
That is such an amazing insight because, and I can see like applicability wise how important that is because postpartum, your hormones are, you know, shifting from pregnancy to back to normal. You may or may not be breastfeeding.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that is a huge contributor to the regularity of their cycles. If you're going through other things like postpartum depression or other issues, then that can affect your body and how your body's responding. So um, if you have a, you know, cesarean or, you know, all of that can affect things too. All of these factors can play a part. So if you've already got the experience beforehand, like time now is the time, you know, carpe diem, seize the day.
Yep. Yeah.
Today now is the time to start learning that while you are conceiving. So that way, if you do want to have that as an option and use that as an option for birth control afterwards, then you have that knowledge already there and know
Right.
how to do it so you can look at it. That's an excellent point. And thank you so much for bringing that up, Lindsay. That's
Yeah, yeah,
awesome.
of course. Of course.
Um, so I would love to talk about conscious conception.
Yeah.
And this is something, you know, of course, I read it in your bio. I would love to share with our audience what is conscious conception and how can women with PCOS going through fertility challenges incorporate that concept into their life?
Yeah. So I view conscious conception as preparing your body physically, emotionally, and spiritually or energetically for conception and actually like taking the time to like plan ahead of time. So not just being like, I just came off birth control and now I'm diving right in, right? Like,
Yeah.
like actually taking a preparation period. Um, I say at least 6 months, even better if it's a year or more, so that you can get to know your body and your cycle like before actually inviting new life in. Because I view conception as like you are inviting new life to take
Yeah.
root in your womb. And what is the kind of environment that you actually want to create in your womb to support that new life? Like imagine you're having a really special guest over to your home.
Mhm.
And what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to set up your house and their guest room? Like, what's that going to look like? What are you going to put there? Like, how are you going to feed them? How are you going to make sure that they feel really taken care of? Because the new life that you're going to invite into your womb is that really special guest. And so what are the things you're going to do to prepare your body, to prepare your womb, to prepare yourself mentally and emotionally to actually invite in new life and support a new life for the next 9 months, and then throughout, like throughout their
Rest of
life,
your life.
right? Yes, yes. And so, you're making this transition and initiation into parenthood or motherhood. And what is that going to look like? And I see the womb as a space that, like I shared before, like it's a vessel, it's a holding vessel. It can hold emotions and stories and traumas from your life or from your lineage even. And so what's actually being held in your womb, and can we clear some of that out? What do you want to keep there? What do you want to clear away
Mhm.
prior to inviting new life? Because I sometimes use a visual of, like, if you have a cup of water and it's completely full of trauma, stories, like emotion, shame, all of that. It's full of that. And then you try to put something else in the cup, it won't fit in. Like the water's just going to be like spilling out everywhere. So, and it's not like we're not like striving for perfection. It's not like we need to clear every trauma and everything that you're holding there, but just giving yourself some time to tend to your own womb and heal and realize like what is going to be serving and supportive of a pregnancy, what's not, and how can we you know feel and release some of what is there to create space for new life to
To
grow.
come
Yeah.
in. I think this is I almost get emotional. While you were talking about that, it elicited a very emotional response for me because 10 years ago when I went through, being personal for a second, when I went through my fertility journey, and it was like I came off of birth control, I didn't have a cycle for 6 months. I told my doctor, they sent me to the fertility specialist who diagnosed me with PCOS and had me on Clomid 2 months later, and so there was no time. There was no time for me um to see the things that were there that have become very apparent now because I've done the work now,
Yeah.
but afterwards and how much that time, not that I wish that my journey was different, but had I been presented with an opportunity and someone to say, hey, guess what? You can wait just a little bit while you're here. This might take a little time. Let's work through some of these things.
Yeah.
Let's work through some of it. I discovered one of the things I had discovered was that it's very subtle, but I had wanted to be a parent, but I didn't know if I could be a mother or that I wanted to be a mother. There was something because of my own personal experience with growing up and things, I was petrified to
Yeah.
be a mom. I wanted to be a parent. I wanted to have a child, but I didn't know if I could be a mother. And I had to
Right.
work through that afterwards. And because
Mm.
none of that was, I just wasn't there because nobody was talking about this stuff,
Yeah.
at least not in my world,
Right.
in the military, certainly nobody was talking about it. And so what you're talking about is, you know, for those in our audience, maybe you just started your fertility journey or maybe you've been going at this for a while, months or even years. Time is something that when we shift our paradigm and see that maybe we have a little bit more time to become pregnant, that it's not just, on the opposite end where you're like, come up and get pregnant right away. We're
Mm.
experiencing the other end. So maybe this time is an opportunity. It's a
Right.
door. It's an opportunity for us to look at some of these internal things, some of that trauma, some of these things that we're holding in, and start to clear it away. So that way we do have a clean house. Like you
Yeah,
said,
like
like,
a blank. I kind of view it as like a blank garden of just very fertile soil.
oh, I love that. I love
Like,
the
yes.
garden analogy. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it takes time. You can't just, you know, I mean, if you throw seeds out in, a weed ridden patch, they're not going to take off. It's, or they're going to get choked out, or they're not going to be able to grow.
Yeah.
And, from a physical standpoint, we know that eggs, take 90 to 120 days before, they're ready to go. So things that happened 3 or 4 months ago, or even, longer than that, are going to play a factor in our current, conception if we do conceive. So keeping that in mind, that this stuff is not just, it's not just what we eat, it's not just all of that. We have this opportunity right now, right here, right now, to look at how we are managing our emotions, what trauma that we might have, and start working through those things to create this more supportive environment and prepare us for this transition from being, without a child and, in your maiden form to your mother more form. And that's a huge transition that I cannot express how big that how big that
So
is.
big.
So taking the
Yeah.
time to work through that is really it's really important.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought in the length of time it takes for an egg to mature. I was like, that was one of the things I was like, I need to mention that in this
Yeah.
interview. And then, so thank you. Um, because yeah, we're looking at like what is if the egg takes, 90 to 100 days to develop, when you're trying to conceive, I encourage you to think back at the 3 months prior and really ask yourself, like, what happened in my life in these 3 months? What have I been holding? Like, what kind of emotions, potential stressors? And is this the egg that I actually want to
Mm.
create
Mm.
the new life? Right. And
Ooh,
yeah. And
this
then
is
the other
this
thing
is
is,
good. This is good.
yeah, yeah. And the sperm too. So sperm takes 70 to 90. God, there's so many numbers of like this to this. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's 70 to 90 days to mature. So we're not only looking at what's happening with the egg, we need to be looking at what's happening with the sperm as
Mhm.
well. And just, yeah, asking yourself, like, is this the time? Is this the
Yep.
ones that we want to
This is the
choose
one.
to use?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I know that we live in a world where we feel so rushed. We are like in
Right.
a microwave society where we want everything to happen right here, right now. We're getting pressure from all the places, from the parents and the friends, and then we have the internal pressure of keeping up with, the our friends, because all our friends are having babies, and we find out that, maybe this is going to take longer than we thought, and we put so much pressure on ourselves. But this is really flipping fertility on its head and saying, well, why don't we do this with more intention, putting
Yeah.
intentionality into conception and asking that question and saying, okay, is this the time right now? Is there some things I can do right now that would support, conception? And then, tag that along with these other changes that you're making that are, might be positive. That's another thing too, is like, okay, if you're making positive changes in your lifestyle and your nutrition and all these other things to support you, well, 3 months down the road, that's going to make a difference in your egg.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
if you just started doing this, if you're just starting to make these changes and working with a provider that wants to address your root causes and is supporting, your the actual effects of what's happening inside your body with PCOS, keep in mind that any lifestyle changes you make are going to take at least 3 to 6 months before they are having their full effect. So
Right.
always keep that in mind. And I love bringing this intentionality to conception because it's definitely a kind of like almost counterculture, but it's so interesting. Maybe we're just bringing something back, maybe we're just
Right. I feel
pulling
like
it back.
we're like unearthing ancient wisdom. That's
I
what I feel like we're doing.
absolutely.
And like one other thing I want to add is um new life doesn't want to be where or like won't happen. Okay, let me start this over.
Sure,
Your
do it.
body, your body needs to feel safe in order to ovulate.
Yeah.
And so if your body isn't feeling safe, whether that's like just maybe there's not this internal sense of safety or there's something happening in your environment, and and safety, it might not feel so obvious of like, I feel unsafe, but maybe it's that there's a past trauma that is there that is, it has long lasting effects of making it feel like, you're not safe, or that your body is not a safe place
Mhm.
to be, because oh my gosh, look at what happened in the past and everything that you're holding, right? So we're also looking at that, where if you're not ovulating for a very long time, how can you actually work to create more of a sense of safety within your body, so that your body can feel like it's a safer time to create new life, because your body is very smart, and it's like, we're not going to be pregnant if it doesn't feel like a safe time to bring a new life into the world. So your body's going to be prioritizing, like reproduction just kind of goes to the back burner,
It does. Yep.
right?
And it
Yeah.
does. And it's not, you know, like you said, it's not always so obvious, right? Like,
Right.
obviously, okay, getting into a car accident, right? That is a
Yes.
stressful thing that is very tangible here and now, right? If it happens
Yes.
while you're in the middle of your fertility process, obviously that's going to affect you on all the levels. But
Yes.
what we don't realize is there might be things in terms of safety. A big thing that has come up, for me personally is like fear of abandonment. And that in my partnerships because of things that I was dealing with as a kid. And so
Right.
I didn't know that that was affecting things until I did.
Yeah.
But unless I had started asking the question in myself, asking internally, writing down, digging through this stuff, did I realize that, oh, well, maybe my body doesn't feel safe to bring another child into this environment because she thinks that she's going to have to do it alone. And so that my
Yeah,
body is
for sure.
translating that as it's not safe to have a baby at this
Right.
time, which, goes in hand with all these other things. So it is really important to understand that this process takes time and processing trauma takes time, but you
Yes.
can always start. And
Right.
every little bit that you kind of start to dig through will start clearing away. And it's kind of like an avalanche. I feel like once you start,
Yeah.
it's like a can of Pringles. Once you start, the fun don't stop.
Right, right. And like, I feel like, healing our body and healing trauma, it is often a lifelong process. And
Mhm.
so it's not like I I don't want anyone to feel like you have to be totally healed
I'm
and
not.
neither am I,
No.
completely like free of all traumas, like before trying to conceive. No, like that's not what we're
No.
going for, but we're just like bringing more attention and awareness to what you're holding, so that you can start to process some of that. Um, and we're not really striving for perfection, because
Perfection.
there is no
Actually,
such,
let's
yeah,
throw
it's
that out. There is
right,
no
like
such thing.
no such thing in this process, because healing, there's always deeper
Yeah.
layers,
Yes, it's
so it's
cyclical.
not,
It is not
uh,
linear.
yeah,
And that's
right, it's not like a one and done
it,
process.
it is amazing though to see, even though that this is a lifelong journey, it's amazing to see the changes that can happen when you start doing this work. It's
Yeah,
quite it's eye-opening. And so
yeah.
I really have enjoyed this conversation, Lindsay. I could talk about this stuff for hours because I think it's so important. But I know that you have an amazing gift for everybody that's attending the summit. It's a womb connection meditation that she is giving to you for free, and I highly recommend you check that link out. You'll see it in the email and everywhere that I post the video. So make sure that you get that freebie. And if people are interested in finding out a little bit more about what you do or working with you, how can they get a hold of you, Lindsay?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram for the mostly, I would say that's like my main home.
Okay.
So I'm Flow with Your Flow on Instagram. My website is flowwithyourflow.com. I also have a podcast called Womb Space, and you
Mm.
can access it on Apple and Spotify, and I believe it's on like every platform, like things I haven't even heard of. So probably wherever you're listening to podcasts, like it's there. And I've also just started to build a Pinterest too. So if you're into
All
Pinterest,
right.
go with your flow on Pinterest. And I just launched like a month ago a membership that teaches you how to learn the fertility awareness method and gives you support. So if you are wanting to learn fertility awareness and be a part of a community who's also learning fertility awareness, I encourage you to check out the membership because you'll be able to like have access to my fertility awareness
Mm,
course as well as my ongoing support to
yeah.
ask me like, oh, is this an optimal time to try to conceive, or like, does this look like I'm pregnant, or any kinds of questions that you have coming up. And I also support people one-on-one through womb healing sessions if you're wanting to dive more into like the conscious conception and trauma healing aspects of things.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. This has been a riveting conversation and one that I feel is so very needed in all the spaces right now is just this really open and vulnerable conversation about conception and seeing all the multi layers of ourselves and that we are not that we're not broken and we're not alone in how we're going
Definitely.
through these things. We all have this tie. So I have one last thing I'd love to ask you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Um, so what is one inspirational thing that you would say to a woman experiencing fertility challenges with PCOS today?
Hmm. I feel like the thing that came to me like just kind of immediately and intuitively is listening to your body and like taking the opportunity to learn how to listen to your body. Maybe you never have listened to your body before. Maybe you didn't even know that that was a possibility of something you could do. But, you know, what a gift it is to be able to actually take the time to learn how your body works and learn how to listen to your body before inviting a new life in to your womb.
Absolutely. Well, I love that so much. Our bodies hold so much information, and the more that we start to develop that relationship, the more that we will truly feel fulfilled in this journey as seeing our bodies as our teammates and not somebody that's fighting against us all the time. So I absolutely
Right.
love that. And thank you so much, Lindsay, and I wish you well and take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.